You know, been around for too many decades. So, Citi-sakti, she tricked me. She's purposely coming late so I would start. I was thinking she would start the class, but it looks like she tricked me. So she's good at that. Anyway, we'll begin with CC.Madhya.17.180. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Yasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Hare Shahariya Yamuna Tira Havana Shahariya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadhari Yasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Hare Shahariya Hey! Jamuna Tira Hare Shahariya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Shri Radhe Ham Shri Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Shri Radhe Ham Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram Lakshmi, Hanuman Jai. Hey, Jaya Gauranita, 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 Jaya Gauranita. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Hey, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nithai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Citi-sakti Maharaj Citi Ki Jai.
Candramauli Maharaj Ki Jai.
You're on.
You're on. You should lead it.
Ladies first. This is the Western country.
In the spiritual world, please go ahead, Maharaj. It wouldn't be proper for me to start, please.
I know you would try to defeat me. I don't know what, I haven't prepared anything, so if I hear your lecture, I'll have something to say.
You can speak spontaneously, please.
I should go, all right, I'll do it. See, I always lose. Which verse are we on? Number
We're doing 180 until 183, and the purport till 183.
Okay, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Tapi Pura Dekitana Vaishnava Achar. Shishta-Caritāmṛta Bhiksha Kaila Angikar. Tatapi Pura Dekitana Vaishnava Achar. Shishta-Caritāmṛta Bhiksha Kaila Angikar. Chant. Ladies. One more lady. Word for word. Oh. Tatapi. Still. Puri. Madhavendra Puri. Deki. After seeing Tanra of the Brahmana, Vaishnava Achar, behavior like a Vaishnava, Sishyakari, accepting him as a disciple, his disciple. Tanra Bhiksha, food offered by him, Angikar, accepted. So I'll read the translation, and verse number 183 is the purport, and then from there. Although the Brahmana belonged to the Sanodiya community, Srila Madhavendra Puri had seen that he behaved like a Vaishnava and therefore accepted him as his disciple. The food he had cooked had also been accepted by Madhavendra Puri. Verse 181. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu willingly requested food from the Brahmana, and the Brahmana, feeling natural humility, began to speak as follows. It is a great fortune for me to offer you food. You are the Supreme Lord, and being in the transcendental position, you are not restricted in any way. Foolish people will blaspheme you, but I shall not tolerate the words of such mischievous people. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks that although the Brahmana did not belong to a superior community, he fearlessly chastised so-called caste Brahmins because he was situated on the platform of pure devotional service. There are people who are opposed to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepting a Vaishnava belonging to a lower class, accepting him. Such people do not consider Mahaprasadam transcendental, and therefore they are described here as mukha, foolish, and dusta, mischievous. A pure devotee has the power to challenge such high caste people, and his brave statements are not to be considered proud or puffed up. On the contrary, he is to be considered straightforward. Such a person does not like to flatter high-class Brahmanas who belong to the non-Vaishnava community. Umagyan Timidandasya Ganajana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Nina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Swapadati Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Shrimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya Desatarine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Paebacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare. You're on.
You're supposed to start the class.
I am? Where's I didn't see that written anywhere. All right, I don't know what to say. Okay. So a devotee, even though someone may be being considered to be what we respectable by material standards, is not influenced by their position. He's in knowledge of what is the actual understanding, especially here as it's talked about in terms of how to behave towards Vaishnavas. And this particular incident is interesting because the son of Dio Brahmana was actually, according to his category, a low-class person. But still, he was accepted by Madhavendra Puri. And therefore, he was considered to be, because Madhavendra Puri is not a small person by any means, even in comparison to all other Vaishnavas. He is probably one of the highest posted Vaishnavas. He actually became the, the Param Guru of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His disciple Ishvara Puri was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's actual guru. So who is Madhavendra Puri? And this is really an interesting, because Madhavendra Puri is an eternal associate of Krishna in the spiritual world. He's not a conditioned soul. He's a Nitya Siddha. But his position is that he's a Kalpavriksha tree, which is not in the spiritual world is considered to be, when we say glorious, in the sense that everything in the spiritual world obviously is glorious, but he is, people would come to the Kalpavriksha tree or the residents of the spiritual world and ask anything and they would get it automatically. The most magnanimous of all. And it says that in terms of his bhakti, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Radharani, and him, there's no fourth person on that same level. He's in other words, he's on the highest level, which is Mahabhava, the highest stage of loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's giving a statement here that he accepts such a person. And so therefore there's no question. But other people will criticize, and this is what the rest of the statements are saying, that people will see, just like Srila Prabhupada was criticized for even going to the West, crossing the ocean, and even was considered by many other Vaishnava sects as being against the principles of sannyas, or against the activities of a sannyasi, to go to the land of the Malachas. But Prabhupada knew what was Lord Chaitanya's declaration as Priti Vityachi Nagar Adigram in every town and village. When Srila Prabhupada was personally here, he was talking how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had spread Krishna consciousness throughout the entire subcontinent of India. And he did. If you do a little historical references, some of the things that happened, there's not so available in what we say circulated print. But there are. I found one book. It was an interesting book. It was put out by Bhanu Swami Maharaj, and it's about an account of a servant who was with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he traveled to South India, and how many different people he met, and how every one of them became Vaishnavas, and every one of them was chanting. So Mahaprabhu did spread Krishna consciousness throughout the entire Indian subcontinent when he's here. And one devotee said to Prabhupada, he was here, he was God, and he did it in India, why didn't he do it around the world? And Prabhupada said, he left it for me. Krishna likes to give the credit to his devotee, or give the chance for that person to receive the mercy, to be glorified, and to also do wonderful service. So that's Krishna's way of elevating his devotee. But others will criticize. I mean, there's a class of people, they like to find fault. That's one of their businesses. They look for they consider themselves also devotees, but they look for the deviations in others, and then they make records about that. I remember there was one person, I won't name the person or the country because it might give away the name, but he died anyway, because he died because he was actually criticizing Vaishnavas very much. And he would keep a record online of all of the so-called deviations that he saw in the leadership in our ISKCON society. And he made it public, and he put them in different categories according to severity. I got criticized for preaching in prisons. Haribol. These people should suffer. They're criminals. They shouldn't be given any opportunity to, they should be punished only. So there was many others. Radhanath Swami got criticized for opening a hospital in Bombay. So he was, even some of the so-called faults that he was so-called finding were not even false, but this was his business. And so you find that, and in every society someone is always looking for reasons. But even outside of that, when Prabhupada crossed the ocean, he introduced Tulsi worship to the Western countries. And he was also criticized by Vaishnavas. Tulsi worship? How can they work? Tulsi, she's a resident in Vrindavan. These Malechas, how can they? So Prabhupada was also criticized for introducing Tulsi worship into the Western countries. So there's so many things we could go down the list, but the point is that when one hears such things, one should not tolerate that. And this is the point that's being made here, that one should speak out. Of course, in a very respectable, and not in an angry way, but in a way to set things right. Because if such deviations go around, then other people automatically start to believe things. And if innocent people will be influenced by such statements, therefore devotee has. And Prabhupada wanted us to do that as a society. He said we should actually be very, what we say, proactive in challenging such persons who criticize. Mahaprabhu is criticized a lot, even in India, because they don't really understand his position. Some people think he's just a very powerful personality that started a religious movement in West Bengal. Others think that maybe he might be some, incarnation, but he's not even an incarnation. He is Krishna himself. So yeah, people will find fault with everything, and of course our society is being criticized in so many different ways. If you don't look for it, because it's actually very, what we say, putrefying to hear such things. But if you find yourself in the physical proximity of such things, you should speak out and let everyone understand what is the actual standard. And if we only have to do is quote Srila Prabhupada, because Prabhupada's given us everything in his books, especially in his books, his writings, of course, his general writings, and his morning walk conversations. There's a lot of information. His room conversations, his general lectures. Prabhupada's giving us an ocean. I remember when I was in New Vrindavan, the source of all deviations, Hare Krishna, and we got off, and the idea is not to chant loudly the Hare Krishna mantra. We should chant it softly, not softly, but silently, Manasi Japa in the mind. And then we were making the whole temple dark and putting vodum candles all around. And you sit in a chair and you're supposed to chant, but people were also chanting another mantra. It's called the Nija mantra. And it's not very pleasant. And so we were thinking, well, this seems to be, and at first everyone liked it. But then I came across a statement by Srila Prabhupada. He said, if you sit in a dark room and you chant, you'll fall asleep. So it was revealed at one point that this is what was actually happening. So that was an idea that really wasn't something that would fit into what we call progressive ways to improve the standard of our practice of Krishna consciousness. And that was the idea. So we have to be very, very careful to follow Srila Prabhupada and not to introduce new things just for the sake of to go along with the social, political, and the what we say the current of the times. What Prabhupada gave us is really the standard, and if we learn how to apply it, then you'll see everything works nicely. Just like Prabhupada gave so many instructions. In one particular section, the Madhya Lila, chapter 3, verse 203, Prabhupada said, we should chant 3 hours of kirtan every night in every one of our temples worldwide. Now, he writes that in his books. So Prabhupada said, what's in my books is absolute. When you read what's in his book, he may say something, you can discuss it and then see how it applies, but in his books there's no question. So he said, yeah, every temple in our society should do 3 hours of kirtan every night. So some temples are doing that, some are doing 2 hours, some are doing 1 here. I know they do a lot of kirtan here, so. But if you look at it in a broader sense, it's not really being followed strictly. And so many other things that Prabhupada wanted us to do as a society. He said we should have classes throughout the whole day. He said deity worship is important, but education is how we spread Krishna consciousness. So he said throughout the day there should be classes, seminars, discussions on different philosophical topics, inviting, traveling preachers to come and give seminars. So many of them are available. So that was Prabhupada's idea for temple worship, not that we just come together in the morning and the evening, and in the middle of the day we just do deity worship. And Prabhupada wanted education. He said these temples are educational institutions. So I'm just bringing some of the things out because I think it's important, because people will introduce all kinds of new things. But as they say in ordinary parlance, there's nothing new under the sun. Just take what has already been given and learn how to apply it. And that's the key. That's what we say our challenge, to learn how to apply it in time, place, and circumstance. But everything has been given. So here, back to the essential point is that there are persons who will always find fault. It's just the way to it, especially in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, Kalir Dosha Nidhi Rajan, it's just an ocean of faults. And don't go on the media. I don't go on the media, I just heard that, that, what does they call it? What's that, social media? The first one that came out.
Facebook.
Yeah, somebody called it disgrace book. All I do is just find fault with somebody. I don't even, some of my disciples run my Facebook page and they tell me, and I said, don't tell me unless it's really something positive. Because, it's so much out there. So it's just a feature of this age. And those who find fault are those who are not really happy within themselves. Because if you're happy within yourself, in other words, you engage in devotional service, even when you see faults, you don't think they're so important. Or if you see something that needs to be corrected, and you make an effort. But you're not out there making propaganda about this and that, which has no really solution. All it does is pollute the whole atmosphere unnecessarily. Haribo. Please take over.
So much more to say. I feel like I'm interrupting. You don't want to say anything else?
Well, I can ask for questions and then you can speak. Is that it? Would that be okay? I could speak more. Is there any questions or comments? Even if it's not directly something I said. Any questions? Yes, Prabhu?
Now you said we shouldn't hear criticism, but we've seen in the history of ISKCON, and you mentioned yourself, New Vrindavan, the source of all deviations. So when there is faults, how do we do it in the correct way?
Well, that has to be done according to the situation. Usually you alert those who are responsible. In other words, those who are in charge. The leaders, the organizers, the temple presidents, they should be the first ones to be alerted. And they also have at their disposal, the resources to deal with it. And they also have the position to deal with it also. If it's outside of the temple compound, then it's not so dangerous. You just somehow or other distance yourself from that. Or if you can say something in a respectable way, because if you become like the fault finder, then all it becomes is more and more, what we say, dissension. It just spirals in that same direction. My dear sir, you're saying this, but Srila Prabhupada said this. So I like Prabhupada. What do you? So, something like that. And Prabhupada told us, he said, there's two types of persons, the honeybee and the fly. And the honeybee will always look for the sweet honey, the nectar, the glories of the Lord, the glories of the Vaishnavas, or even activities that are in line with pure devotional service. But the fly, what will they look for? They'll look for the source, the garbage. So, therefore, Prabhupada said, don't be a bee. Even if you see faults, if it's not so important, if it doesn't cause problems, then you can just pass it up. Just make like it's not even there. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to also say, this is a little bit more deeper. He would say, if the faults in others disturb you, look inside yourself and see what about yourself is causing you to be disturbed. So yeah, we should, therefore, when we see faults, we can also look for good qualities. But when it comes to philosophical deviations or statements in relation to the scriptures, one should speak out. That was things that Prabhupada did not tolerate. He tolerated a lot of things, but when people were changing the philosophy to make it look like another way, he was very strong to bring that out, to correct it, and to establish the standard. Prabhupada was very strong about not deviating from the standard. And that you have to know. You have to know that requires some intelligence, and also requires some connection with knowledge. So, yeah. Anything else, Mataji? Someone's going to have to relay you. You have to be like Mahavishnu, who had Rama Devi relay what he wanted.
Thank you for a lovely class. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna himself, and he was a leader. But why is a leader criticized? Why was he criticized?
Because he didn't come out as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He came out as a devotee of the Lord. And therefore, when he was also addressed as the Lord, he would block his ears. Only on rare occasions, one or two occasions, the Prakash Leela, did he come out as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and accept worship in an open way. So people saw him, or if they heard about him, they didn't really know much about him. All they did is heard him. And some people used to say that he was a leader of a band of gay people, because he would always associate with men. Yeah, there was people criticize him for being gay. We've heard things like that also. So there's an old saying by the Russian KGB: "Give me a man, and I'll give you a fault." So if you want to find fault, it's easy. But if you want to understand things the way it is, it takes some, what we say, investigation, some openness, some time. Just like sometimes you see, somebody will come to you and complain about somebody else, and you'll believe them. But then you haven't even heard the other side yet. So we make that sometimes, we become sympathetic without even hearing the other side. So, you have to say, well, that's, I can sympathize with what you're feeling and saying. But, I need to hear the whole side, before you can actually make any kind of judgment. If they're looking for you to make a judgment, A lot of people want to be, what we say, they're not feeling support, so they come to others to find support by telling what their side of the story is. And then you have to discriminate and say, well, and that's nice, but let me hear from the other side also, so we get a complete picture. And sometimes you hear from the other side, it's two different stories. It's not even related, it's so far distant from what you originally heard. And that's how people's minds work many times. So therefore one should be a little bit, what we say, open. Jai. Shri Radha, Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Gornitai ki jai. Okay?
Sorry, can I have a second question?
Of course.
What was he mainly criticised for? What was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mainly criticised for?
What was he being... Well, he was... They didn't criticize him as much as they just made statements about him that weren't true. That was more the case. They said, well, he's not God. He's just some person who started a religious movement in West Bengal. So why do we have to hear from him? But Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada says, unless we worship Mahaprabhu, we can't approach Radha Krishna worship. It's not possible. So, and then Mahaprabhu also went into, like the Prakasananda Saraswati, when Mahaprabhu was in Varanasi. He was chanting and dancing in the streets. And the Mayavadis called him a sentimentalist. He's just hanging around with these sentimental people singing and dancing. He's a sannyasi. He should be studying, Vedanta. That was a big criticism, which led for Mahaprabhu to actually visit them. And then he gradually, using his method, gradually converted all of them to Vaishnavas. That's mentioned in the 7th chapter of Adi Lila. So he was highly criticized by the Mayavadis. And when he would go in ecstasy, sometimes in public, people would think it's just some show, some sentimentalists, because other people do that also. They're called smartas or sahajas. They just make some show of having ecstatic symptoms. But Mahaprabhu was not making a show. But people can't recognize that, so they'll find fault like that also. He's just a sentimentalist, singing and dancing and crying in public, making a show. Yeah, that's there, and that's even recorded. And there's other things also. What else did... When Mahaprabhu was viewing Jagannath at the Garuda Stamba from a distance, one lady, she was an elderly lady, she also was looking at Jagannath. She got so, ecstatic, that she completely lost awareness, and she climbed about the Garuda Stamba, and then she put her foot on Lord Chaitanya's shoulder. And Lord Chaitanya didn't say anything, because he knew she was just wanted to see Jagannath. She was in in ecstasy of happiness. But Lord Chaitanya's, servant grabbed her, pulled her down, and he chastised him for doing that. He said, Mahaprabhu said, I wish I had the devotion that she had. So even some of his own associates didn't understand him, at least when he went into these ecstasies. And you can go, if you go through the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, Chaitanya Bhagavat, you'll find other statements of things that he was criticized. Not criticized, just misunderstood most of the time. Okay, you are so, let me say, absorbed that I can't tell what's happening on you. Are you, any of this, did it get through?
Hare Krishna.
Okay, you are very mystical. Okay, so now we can, because we're running out of time, and so you should now also save me.
Save me. I was just thinking about what you were saying in terms of many of the things that Chaitanya was criticized for him being misunderstood. Because actually what he came to give us is unconventional. Unconventional because he's giving us the highest with least qualifications. He's giving us the most with minimum contribution, which actually fits very much with our modern time mentality. We don't want to give a lot, but we want to receive a lot. Is it on? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty loud. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. Which, yeah, it fits. You know, this thing is one of the diseases of Kali Yuga, the cheating propensity is strong. What is cheating? We don't like this word cheating. We often politely call it efficiency or putting in a great return on an investment. So he came to give the greatest return on an investment. You have to do very little. And I'm going to give you the top secret. You can just know the Supreme on a first name basis. I mean, who else has come to give us Krishna, God, on a first name basis? No religion, no teacher, no one. So only Krishna can do that. And so when you do something unconventional, he broke all the boundaries of even Shastra. So many different designations. Actually, if you go into the later verses, it talks about, Lord Chaitanya explains that there's different things written in different Puranas and Shastras. And so that's why sometimes people fight over these and disagree over these small things. But he came to break all those boundaries. And actually, these verses, this purport, and many, many times what we hear over and over again, especially in the CC, but throughout Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam, is that neither the recipient nor the preacher, the teacher, those who connect us to Parampara, give us Krishna consciousness, neither the recipient of that or the propagator is qualified by any material designation. No physical attribute, no psychological attribute, no country, no race, no gender. And because we are carrying this same spirit, because of Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we've inherited that spirit from him. We're also doing something unconventional. So it's very easy for what we do to become misunderstood, even when we are proper. Okay, even when actually there may be so many devotee accounts on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook or Disgracebook. There may be so many, right? Still, what's said can be very, very misunderstood. People may sometimes see what we do as sentimental or take it cheaply, just something like, okay, this is just something to make us feel calm and happy or relaxed, or again, may determine qualification, receptivity, based on very, very, very human things, based on conditioning. And actually to judge a person's ability to give or receive Krishna consciousness on the physical platform, on any physical attribute or psychological attribute, social attribute, it is actually offensive, because it's against Krishna, it's against Lord Chaitanya's instruction. It's against their instruction, against their very definition of pure devotional service, that there is no material obstacle to pure devotional service, that just that which we put in. We do this with others. We've talked quite a bit about criticizing, right, which is a very open expression of valuing or judging, measuring somebody's worth based on something very superficial. And usually we have a very one-dimensional perspective. But we do this with ourselves. We do this with ourselves. We limit our ability to receive and grow in our Krishna consciousness, and also to share Krishna consciousness on so many different things. We may pin it on, oh, the community's like this, and they're against, my type of body or my type of culture, so there's no opportunities for me, or I'm too young, or I'm too old, I'm too this, not rich enough. We make all these excuses. I'm not smart enough, I'm not tolerant enough, I'm not humble enough, for whatever reason. There's a difference between criticizing and being aware, as Maharaj was talking about. Right? We can be aware of something, but criticism is when you make a judgment of its inherent value. See, so when we are judging our ability to receive or share, we are taking material natures, all of the Maya Devi's tests and all the nonsense that's out there, and we're owning it, we're internalizing it, we're accepting it for ourselves. So we make offenses. That's what criticism leads to, right? What's an offense? What is an offense? An offense is when we are making a very conscious, and we can be unconsciously conscious. We are putting a barrier, a block, okay, a block to our receptivity or our sharing. And if we look at all offenses, independent of, not even category, forget the category, just any offense, think about how it's created and where it comes from. It comes when we are under the influence of the enemies or the lower urges of the mind. It's always that. It is always that. Okay, if we look at any of the enemies or urges, whether that's envy, born of comparison, greed, lust, anger, all of them are generally what's driving us to put a barrier, see a discrepancy, put more value on what we think we're about in this world or somebody else is about, and forgetting what's actually beyond, underneath, and behind all of that, right? And what's underneath all of the different these enemies or lower urges of the mind? What's driving all of them? Fear. Because human existence is fear-based. We talk a lot about empowerment, right? People go to coaches, therapists. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel encouraged. I want to feel positive. But as long as we are relying on a ever-moving sense of worth, it's going to be very difficult to feel consistently empowered. Because if our sense of self-worth is always moving, if the parameters are always moving, you feel unsteady, you feel vulnerable, you feel scared. Right? So let's look at envy, for example. How is fear at the root of envy? When we compare and we see a discrepancy. Okay? When we fear that, oh, there's a discrepancy here, I'm not going to be seen. Sat, existence potency, the quality of the soul. We're so used to being seen, we're so used to existing, right? We seek it out in this perverted way. I want to be validated, I want to be seen. But when we compare, which is what a lot of societies become about in a rampant way. All digital media has really done is it increased the hankering to compare and the stimulus to compare, right? Because the spread, the variety with which we compare ourselves has become constant and very vast. What does it do? Oh, I'm not enough. I'm not being seen. I now have to do this to be seen. It's that fear I'm not going to be, because my being now in this world, in human psychology, in human life, our sense of existence is based on whether somebody else sees us or not. It's not based on fully on our self-worth, right? Even our self-worth, how much is your self-worth based on what other people have told you, right? So this validation, I know this perverted reflection, human validation is a perverted reflection actually of this eternality experience that we have, of the actual essential self. So fear is at the root of that, this comparison. So a fear of not existing is what leads to envy and comparison. When we fear not enough, we fear that we don't have enough, it leads to greed. When we fear that we are not going to be loved, it leads to lust. Because lust says, what about me? That's a fear voice. What about me? Isn't it? So, and when we have a fear of losing something, that we might lose something or not gain something, we get angry. Now think about it. When was the last time you thought with intelligence, when you were angry, comparing yourself to others and getting, envious about it? When you were feeling like you didn't have enough? Did you think clearly? None of us do. Those positions don't make us think clearly. And so, we become bewildered. Our intelligence is lost, as Krishna says, and we speak harsh words. So, and we behave in incredible ways and incredulous ways. And all of us have experienced this, at least with our nearest and dearest, even if in public we may behave differently. Right? Give the mind an audience and it'll be on its best behavior. It'll be on its best behavior. If you give the mind a false ego an audience, right? But then behind closed doors, we'll see the real things come out. So, but what we're hearing here is that pure devotional service makes us fearless. See, this Brahmana who was by his birth judged that, he shouldn't really even have access to devotional service or particular types of mantra, let alone take initiation, let alone cook for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay? But he was bold. He was fearless. It's described here in the purport how he was fearless in protecting Lord Chaitanya. He was fearless in correcting other people's criticism of Madhavendra Puri and Lord Chaitanya, in accepting him as a disciple and someone who can cook. Why? Where did that fearlessness come from? See, when we engage in pure devotional service, it immediately starts to free the mind. It frees the mind of these enemies. And what happens is, as we continue to progress, as we go through the process of anartha and nivritti, as we stop succumbing to this chatter that has befriended us, and we've also befriended for so many lifetimes, right? Instead of being congested and suffocated by the darkness and the temporary nature of this constantly losing our footing in this world, the mind becomes illuminated. Becomes illuminated by the natural qualities that all of us have. Real empowerment. Real empowerment. Because the natural qualities of the self, which Krishna describes, yes, of course, eternally wise and blissfully connected, but how does that manifest? There's a supramind of the soul. There's a supraconsciousness. There's forgiveness, kindness, tolerance, mercy, all the antidotes of the enemies. And these illuminate the mind. So our human psychology, it's less driven by the false ego and starts to be driven by the divine ego. In other words, our human psychology or our mind becomes aligned with divine psychology. So what happens is, when we are naturally, when the mind starts to be quite literally illuminated by the self, we stop being offensive. stop being offensive. Because we stop being pushed by the very things that make us say unintelligent things, right? And not only are we not making offenses ourselves, but we are protecting Guru, Krishna, and Tattva when other people are also making offenses. But it takes practice to develop this fearlessness. Why does it take practice? Why does it take practice to develop courage and fearlessness, especially when true fearlessness is a natural quality of the spiritual self? Because when we endeavor to align, we're telling Krishna, I'm doing my part to lift the veil between us. And we encourage Krishna to do his part in lifting his side of the veil. Because the veil is two-sided. Yes, it's not just, oh yes, we're lifting the veil, just my effort will get me there. But that effort attracts Krishna's kindness. He sees we're trying. And so, as we try, then he reciprocates. But where are we applying our endeavor? Throughout Bhagavatam, throughout Shastra, constantly our teachers come back to the mind. Steady the mind, control the mind, don't trust the mind. In the 5th canto, in the 6th chapter, when it talks about Lord Rishabhadev's teachings, Maharaj Parikshit, he asks Shukadev Goswami specifically about Lord Rishabhadev and how he had pure devotional service and he attained all these mystic opulences. But he actually didn't even ever use those mystic opulences. He just ignored them, didn't act on them, because he was moving like an avadut. He could have easily gone, oh wow, now I can be smaller than the small, bigger than the big, I can travel at the speed of the mind, I can collect so many followers just by these simple things, because mystic opulences give you a great life in this world. For a limited period of time, but they still give you a great life. And Shukadev Goswami's answer to Parikshit Maharaj is that just like when a hunter captures animals, they don't trust the animals. They still know any time these animals can run away. So in the same way, the mind is not to be trusted. Because even if you think you've got the mind under control, there's always something it can latch onto. Because the mind is so still, even when illuminated by the soul, until we're perfect, until we're at the very highest stages, even somebody at Ruchi and Ashakti, even at Bhav, one has to be careful of the mind. Because Brahma fully can't manifest because we can't contain it in this body. Krishna doesn't allow it to fully manifest until we leave the body. And actually says this in Madhurya Kadambini, that the absolute removal of the last cause of anarthas, which is offenses, absolute doesn't happen until the full establishment of prema. So it means as long as we are embodied, as long as we are embodied, we have the risk of making offenses. And the seat of that is the mind. Because the mind is still always having to process what's going on in this world. So actually the more advanced someone becomes, the more actually they are careful of the mind, the less they trust it. But we walk around trusting our mind like it's our best friend. And not like it's our best friend, because even if we trusted that it was our best friend, we'd still see it as a separate person. We trust the mind like it's ourself. Every thought and feeling, every idea, every urge, we accept as, I'm like this. How many times do you say, my mind is telling me this? We don't do this in our conversations. I feel like this, I think like this, my opinion is me. But we're just taking what the mind's saying. So it's like we're a ventriloquist has a puppet. You don't see the ventriloquist's mouth moving. And so you think the puppet's doing all the talking. So the mind's doing all the talking, but it's our lips that are moving. Right? So we have to be very careful. Really take what Krishna says about the mind seriously. Really take what the sages say about the mind seriously. Because it is the mind which latches onto these variegated designations and then sees discrepancies. And this comes back to this point of unconventional. Okay? We are unconventional. We represent an unconventional spiritual master. we represent an unconventional Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya. Okay? So we're going to attract unconventional people. The conventional do not join this community. It's amazing. It's wonderful to be unconventional. Because to be normal today, if we look at what's normal today, then it's tough to try and fit in. So it's interesting that Srila Prabhupada over and over again, just on this point of how do we deal with, how this Brahmana, he's protecting Lord Chaitanya with great fearlessness. Not because he's proud. Prabhupada emphasizes he's not proud that, oh look, now I can cook for Lord Chaitanya. So you better watch out, all of you. He's not saying that. He's protective of the Lord. Right? He's feeling empowered, but he's not rude. See, Prabhupada would say over and over again, and he really talks about this, particularly, I hear him talk about it in the 3rd canto over and over again, because he addresses a lot of the life of being a human being, and so you're looking after your human identity and your spiritual identity simultaneously. He talks a lot about it in the 3rd canto. And he says a devotee should be plain and simple talking. Be plain and simple and straightforward with the truth. Okay? When you're plain and simple, you're fearless. Our talk gets complicated when we're full of fear. Okay, he actually says that, Srila Prabhupada says it's very hard to be successful in this material world unless you're diplomatic, because you are constantly adjusting what you're saying to please someone, right? So that you can be successful in their eyes, so you get an opportunity. And actually there is some truth to this, right? There is some truth to this. Actually, there's a lot of truth to this. Perfect. Srila Prabhupada only speaks perfection. But we experience this ourselves. And so people fear being plain and truthful and simple. So many times you've realized something, and it's not even become emotionally invested yet. And you can simply be in a position to observe and say, this isn't actually, this isn't true, or this isn't healthy. But our fear makes us think, oh, if I say this though, what if they don't like me? What if I lose my position? What if they perceive me as being this kind of person? What if I don't look humble anymore? Then they won't think I'm a devotee if I don't come across as humble. I must keep up looking humble. And so many times, people who have the ability to change things just by speaking the plain and simple truth, let's check ourselves with this. We don't. So Srila Prabhupada says a devotee needs to learn to speak the plain and simple truth. Okay? And a lot of preaching is about just speaking the plain and simple truth. We don't have to deny anybody else what they're experiencing, but we can still tell them the truth. And actually, when we become more Krishna conscious, as this fearlessness develops, both through the revelatory aspect of the process of Krishna consciousness, but also through our endeavor of practicing courage and fearlessness. As that happens, we are less suffocated by insecurity. You see that your plain and simple truth doesn't just make the other person feel cared for. You feel cared for, you feel empowered. Okay? And this leads to spiritual success. And all material success can come from spiritual success, based on what Krishna wants for us. But no spiritual success is born of any material success. Okay? Because if that was true, then there are material determinants for our spiritual advancement. So there is a lot more in these verses. Right? You might sit there thinking, oh yeah, I'm not in the caste game. I don't care about Smarta Brahmanas. That's not the point. We may not be living in a society which judges based on your spiritual qualification, based on your caste or what type of a Brahmana you are, but we definitely live in a society where we ourselves make judgments based on the body. We play the body game still. And our consciousness is collective. So when we see each other, all us unconventional misfits, okay, that join the community. Why don't we fit in? Because we're looking for something different, right? And some people outside will really appreciate that we're looking for something different. They'll be like, oh, I want to know more. Other people will misunderstand What do you mean? You don't look like a monk. You don't look like a spiritual person. But you're deeply absorbed. You work an office job and you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know? And it's, you know, these things will intrigue, but most people are innocent, you know, as to your point. And so because most people are innocent, and there is this bias, this psychological bias, we believe the first thing we hear. So from the beginning of school, we are taught, work hard, live in a meritocracy, what you put in is what you get out. Even if life shows us what you put in is not what you get out, okay? Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less, okay? And your success is based on so many fleeting things. We believe it. We believe that opinion. And so when we hear any other opinion, that story has less power. We have this in conversations. Someone comes and tells you, you know, Prabhu, Mataji, did you hear what happened? Now, unless you say, no, I didn't hear what happened, and unless I can help, I don't want to hear what happened. You'll hear the story and your mind will immediately, yes, because the mind wants to make sense of everything, again, a perverted reflection of the chit potency, right? Knowing. We accept the first version, then the second and third and fourth version comes, but they only really have the power to adjust a little bit, but they don't change massively. So it's hard work for us, actually, in many ways, to adjust the mind to the real truth of Krishna consciousness. So I guess what I wanted to just close with is, where do we begin when you're dealing with an adversary who you're not even aware of? Because even with an enemy, you're aware, there's the enemy, there's me. There's the friend, there's me. There's some separation. But how do you deal with something? How do we do that? Deal with something which we have literally internalized as the self and accepted as the self. How do we deal with that? You know what? It requires some, and this is going to sound strange, artificial mistrust. Because if you're in a position of trusting your mind, which, you know what, everybody is to varying degrees. When we are already in a position of trusting so much that we are operating on, okay, I'm hungry, I'm sleepy, I want this, I want that, this person said this about me, I'm too short, I'm too thin, I'm too fat, I'm too clever, I'm too this, I'm too... So many different things, okay? When you're accepting the dialogue, it's like you're ventriloquist, right? Mouth is moving and this mind is telling you what to say and what to be. It requires artificial, right? Because you have to force it. How do we do that? Because that's create that separation. It requires, what will the ventriloquist have to do? Just stop. The puppet has to look around. Oh, we're not the same person. We're actually not the same person. In fact, this is artificial, right? So my invitation is, even if you do this only for short periods, only try it once or twice, you will see the power of it very quickly. When you find your mind telling you anything that will harm yours or another person's Krishna consciousness. And the reason I'm phrasing it so broadly is because everybody's at different places, okay? And so we'll have different awareness of what we recognize as being harmful to our Krishna consciousness, or another person's Krishna consciousness, or even another person's welfare, even on a human level, The next time you find your mind telling you to act on the impulse of any of those enemies, just stop. Look at it, identify the fear. What is it that the mind and your identity, this jumping around, modifying identity, is telling you you are going to lose out on? What is it that is telling you you're not going to gain? What is it telling you that you need to hold tightly onto? Just identify it. Because when you did essays at school, you had to compare and contrast, right? You can then you're in a position to compare and contrast. That's what it does for us, that space. And create some artificial mistrust, even if it feels fake. Even if you feel like, no, but that's the kind of person I am. I'm noble. These are the kind of things I get upset about, you know? Because we all have some sense of self-righteousness. It's one of the mind's tricks. Just stop. Okay, yes, although that's might feel like my hymn sheet, you know, my MO, I'm going to just stop and look at where it comes from. And if it's not coming from me, the real me, and it's coming from impressions around me, and it's going to bring me down on another person, let me ask myself some questions. What's my fear? What is my fear? That's a good place to start. And you know what? As you get the answer to that, you will have other questions. And you know what will happen? You will start to understand your mind. And as you understand your mind becomes much more pliable to change. Because before we can move the mind from enemy to friend, it must go through the stage of becoming a student. And we all become good students when the teacher understands us. Yes? If any of you were rebellious students, didn't like school, you may be able to identify one or two teachers at school who somehow understood you. Maybe their lessons or their classes were the only ones you really listened to. So the mind, because the mind will push back, like, hang on a minute, you listened to everything I said all this time, now you're questioning me. Yeah, but don't worry, it's just to understand you. Let me understand you. We can work together on this. The mind gets understood. And as you understand your mind, not yourself, so we all walk around going, I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to go deeper. You know, I'm journaling. I'm trying to understand myself. No, I'm trying to understand this mind that I carry, my mind. Okay? So you start to understand your mind, then you will also understand how to deal with your mind when it is pushing back. And you know what? Then we become not just inoffensive, but we become unoffendable. Because every offensive behavior begins with us becoming offended in the first place. And if we don't get offended, we won't make offenses. Or at least we reduce the risk greatly. So those who don't take offense, they don't make offense. So these verses, they're just, there are a few other things, but this Vaishnavachar, you know, that Madhavendra Puri saw in the Brahmana, this is what he saw. He saw that his behavior, his walk, his talk, his interactions were not based on fear. They were courage-based. And so he would accept his prasad, and so would Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because prasadam is such a powerful medium for consciousness. And that is one of the strongest ways we shape our mind. So our culture has changed, okay? I talk about this quite regularly, because even in our community, our culture has moved from a culture of cooking for the deities and cooking for ourselves, as in we only honor what the deities have, what Krishna has accepted. We only cook that which is cooked for Krishna and eat what is cooked for Krishna. We always offer it to Krishna. We honor Krishna's remnants. And we have, unfortunately, created and accepted an eating out society. By vulnerability, circumstance, whatever you want to call it, lack of cooking skill, whatever you want to call it. Whatever it is. Sometimes, yeah, laziness. Look, I don't want to, just because we are short of time, I don't want to labor this point, but you all know what digital media has done. It's feeding us constantly. It is designed to disable our ability to discriminate. Studies show this. You take adults and children off digital media, even for 2 weeks, studies show that their ability to choose and regulate themselves increases manyfold. Just 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. The minute something becomes a habit, it's like everything else is blinkered. It's like being a horse wearing blinkers, right? You've ever seen a horse with blinkers? They can't see anything outside of that. So we don't want to live life on autopilot. But when we eat, when we keep consuming Okay, whether that's digesting digital media, or especially when we consume things which are not cooked for Krishna, not offered to Krishna, not honored in that way, the mind, it gets shaped by so many things. And you know what? I know we say we have our mind, but our mind is not always ours, because it belongs to a lot of other people. Because a lot of other people influence what goes on in our mind. And a lot of that happens through what we eat. So anyway, study these verses. There's a lot in there. And let's help each other to maybe actively mistrust our minds a little in the pursuit of understanding them. Take some questions? Okay, 5 minutes, then we have to go at 9 o'clock. Okay. You can ask questions to Maharaj as well. Shama Vallabha Gopi, can we get the mic to her, please?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Maharaj, and Citi-sakti Mataji for a wonderful class. On this point of simplicity, I believe it's important to be simple, and I think I'm so fascinated that someone could read straight away. But when you talk about being simple and speaking your mind, when is it right to actually hold back? That's all, is it? Yeah.
When it's right to hold back. Relationship is important. Relationships are at the heart of our community. Even these verses are about relationship. Right? They are ultimately about relationship. Lord Chaitanya accepts the Brahmana because Madhavendra Puri has accepted the Brahmana. Exactly, everything, beginning to end. So you must look at that first, okay? Because that's part of plain and simple talking, is a person willing to receive. But part of plain and simple talking is also, okay, they may not be willing to, but when we care about people, we find a way to communicate. And words are not the only way to communicate what we want to make someone aware of. We can make people aware of many things through example, through showing them, and actually through prayer. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
There's a few hands up here. I mean, should we send it to Jayanti first, and then Mataji behind you, and then yourself? Is that okay? I'm going to give very brief answers, just because of time. Yes,
Okay,
Jayanti.
thank you so much for the wonderful class, for the Maharaj and for yourself. My question is regarding, okay, we've heard how, and we all know how detrimental is criticism to others, and we've heard why. My question is regarding when the criticism is, I've heard many often, and I do it myself, it's towards ourselves. Is that detrimental as well? Or because we read about the great acharyas, how they talk about themselves and kind of tend to imitate, maybe?
Yes,
So-
rather than follow in the footsteps.
Yes.
So where's the line, what's the difference between humility and criticism?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. Humility comes from a place of not comparing. I know with this third verse of the Shikshastakam, thinking oneself lower than a blade of grass, right? It's actually free of comparison, that statement, although it sounds like it's full of comparison. And when we hear it as full of comparison, who here is going to think themselves lower than a blade of grass? Right? But when it is free of comparison, when we're really only free of comparison when we stop judging or assessing our value on this and on this, then the things that happen to us don't humiliate us, they humble us. Because the things that happen to us, and even the things the mind says to us, we're able to receive and see Krishna's hand in that. So when we criticize ourselves, who made this body? Who made this mind? Krishna did. Again, we put a block between us and Krishna. He's everywhere. He's everywhere all the time. All the time. And he's with us all the time. So really, if he's everywhere and with us all of the time, loving us unconditionally, unmotivated, uninterrupted, in a way that's favorable to us, oh wow, look, gosh, that's how we have to love him back, right? The way he loves us. It means that the onus is on us to carefully say, no, this is a block, this is a block. Self-criticism is not the same as humility and self-awareness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I think Mataji behind you there. I know it.
Thank you, Citi, for your kind words. Just questions around, you said be simple, straightforward and truthful is the actual talk you've mentioned today. So I'm going to be that today. If leaders make mistakes and are envious, how do you address that? Have made mistakes?
Wow, you guys are asking questions that need long answers. If leaders make mistakes and are envious,
yes,
how do you address that? It depends on who you are. I think Maharaj talked about this before as well. It depends on who you are, what your position is, because we have to, even though, again, coming back to Prabhupada says, every devotee has a human life to take care of and a spiritual life to take care of. Okay? Even in the advanced stages, they have their human identity to take care of and the spiritual identity to take care of. So it's simultaneously. So whilst we are living unconventionally in this world, we still have to live according to the way human society and Vaishnava society works. Right? People will expect that. Not just that, oh, well, I'm supposed to be plain and simple talking, so I noticed this about a leader and they're envious and they've done this, so I should go and tell them. But if you are not in a position, and what does that mean? Not just position by institutional structure, but position even by relationship. This is what position means. What does position mean? Position actually means...
But what if you're a devotee, just a devotee?
Yeah, but still, what's your relationship with that person? By service, by friendship, what's the relationship? Position is related to relationship. They're like the same thing, really. You know, you can only determine something's position based on its relationship to other points. So you've got to be mindful of that. And that's why Maharaj was saying sometimes we have to use the structures that are around us to get the message through, rather than carrying that, actually, quite frankly, burden of having to correct them. Because it's a burden when you can't do something about it. So you have to put it down or pass it on to someone else. So that's why we go through these things. We see things and then we either hold on to it and carry it like, oh, my life won't be right unless I remember this terrible thing that happened or this terrible thing this leader did. Or, oh, actually, you know what, I'm just going to be forgiving and just drop the whole thing. That's not forgiveness either. That's ignorance. You know? No, but when we actually, this is not my burden to carry. There's somebody else who carries these piles of hay. Let me give it to them and they'll do something with it. So look at position, relationship, and you can be plain and simple talking to the person you feed back to, because the way you communicate the message, it will help them to also communicate in a plain and simple way. Okay?
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
We got one question from here.
Yeah, this last one, because we have to go.
From Dimple. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj Citi-sakti for a really inspiring, helpful class. I wanted to ask you mentioned something about...
Could you hold the mic up a little? Yeah.
You mentioned something about protecting Guru, Krishna, Tattva.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, Maharaj mentioned this, and this is what the verse talks about, is protecting the truth. Protecting the truth. And Lord Chaitanya came to give us the truth. Unadulterated truth. The actual fact. What does Krishna actually want? You know? And what's actually pleasing to Krishna, and how to do that. Not our idea of it. and not previous generations' idea of it. He pretty much kicked out all the different segregation and distinctions on human and bodily platform. Every single one. Even animals and humans. I mean, he went to the forest and had animals dancing in ecstasy. So when we see people or ourselves discerning, leading, operating in a way that is, and again, this depends on what your service is and what your circle of influence is, in a way that is going to be offensive, i.e. block the Lord's mercy. then we have to see what can I, often we'll turn a blind eye because we're not fearless. We're scared of losing a position. We say we're scared of making offenses, but often we're not scared of making offenses. We're usually scared of losing a position, or how someone sees us. Yeah, but this requires a little bit more discussion. Offense is always requires
Yeah, that's
discussion.
a big subject.
So we're going to have to take your leave, and it's breakfast time. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
I
Happy
couldn't have said
birthday.
anything. It was yesterday. Thank you.
Today we're celebrating her birthday by chanting the same number of rounds. I'm not going to mention the number.
The whole world knows. 16, right?
Everyone dreams like that, yeah.
Well, actually, but we're never older than that anyway.
Krishna never got older than 16, so I guess if we try to be older than him, it would look back.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Candramauli Maharaj ki jai.